Greetings, respected viewers. This is George from Ireland, and in this video I'm going to explain why I believe that the United Kingdom will eventually become a colony of India. About 4% of the UK population is of Indian descent. Most of them are British citizens. 4% might not seem much, but bear in mind, babies born today, that's more like 8% are of Indian stock. The figure's rising all the time. The geriatrics are virtually all white. They're dying off. In addition to that 8% of babies who are of Indian ancestry, more Indian people arriving in the UK all the time. They have a higher fertility rate than most other ethnic groups. Take people from other former countries of the British Raj, Bangladesh and Pakistan, and that overall South Asian population will be something like 8% from the former Greater India, and maybe 16% of babies born these days from what I could call Greater India. So it's growing rapidly, and you know, where will they be in a century? It'll be perhaps 25% of the population will be South Asian descent. Incidentally, British Bangladeshis often don't mind being called Indian. The Indian restaurants in the UK are often run by Bangladeshis. And so there's no such thing as a Pakistani restaurant in the UK. There are plenty of Indian restaurants. And the British Indians are an increasingly affluent community, self-assured of their place in the UK. They've been in the UK in significant numbers for about 70 years. If you break down the United Kingdom by religious communities, the second richest community are the Sikhs. So we know that India is going to be a superpower. The United States' time in the sun is drawing to a close. It'll still be puissant, but just not as mighty as it once was. We know China is a superpower already, but India is catching her up in terms of population and the economy. Indian corporations are growing. Indian multinationals have already set up in the UK, are buying increasingly prestigious properties like hotel chains in the UK. India is obviously a middle-income country. If it's going to be a high-income country in 50 years or something, that's a real game changer. India's got its own space agency, its own development agency for countries which are less economically developed. You all know that Narendra Modi, he visited the UK a couple of years ago, went to Wembley, the National Football Stadium, where he's greeted by tens of thousands of British Indians, got an absolutely rapturous reception. And at the time, British Prime Minister Cameron, he reaffirmed the UK's long-standing policy that India must be a permanent member of the UN Security Council. India's got about 20% of the world's population. It's bizarre that India does not have a permanent seat on the UN Security Council. It's a standing affront to reason and justice that will eventually be addressed. Another thing to point out, India is the largest Anglophone country in the world. The United States has got 320 million people. Some of them speak Spanish as their first language. I know that India has 14 official languages, one of which is English, but many upper middle class Indians speak English as their home language, and Hindi is more of a foreign language to them, or the state languages are really a second language for them. So that gives the UK, gives India extra punch in the Anglosphere, in the Commonwealth. India is going to be putting itself on the map even more, hosting the Commonwealth Games again, I don't doubt, surely the Olympic Games before long. So who is going to dominate the second half of the 21st century? The two contenders are China or India. Well, there's no doubt who wins the beauty contest, because India's got freedom of expression, fair trials. India's humane, almost never executes people. There's parliamentary government. People are free to dissent. There are free and fair elections. They're peaceful transfers of power. People's needs are addressed. The government does something towards social justice, trying to keep food prices down and things like that, trying to do something to improve the environment, whereas the Chinese government really doesn't give a damn about its people, and frank exploitation is allowed. So yes, China's GDP is higher, but that's partly because it'll ride roughshod over the needs of the people, and if they think it'll help economic development, that will just be done. That'll benefit the billionaires more than the average person. So China's population is stagnating. In a way, that's a good thing, because India hasn't forced people to abide by population control, which is one of the reasons why the penury of certain people has not been addressed. The rupee is an increasingly important currency. We all know that Mumbai is a rising financial centre, and the United Kingdom is going to look to India more and more. The UK will be out of the European Union in a year and a half. The EU is facing severe problems, though I don't think it will implode, with a lot of illegal immigration, with unmanageable debts and financial commitments, with possible secession from Catalonia, with trying to let in countries which are really not suitable to join the EU at the moment, like Albania. So the EU is in a flat spin. So the UK needs to form partnerships with other countries. With someone as erratic as Trump in the White House, improving the relationship with the United States is going to be very challenging. And India is the obvious country towards which to look to try and get a good trade deal. The UK does actually rather little commerce with India, which is disgraceful for the UK because India is such an enormous market. The UK desperately needs to curry favour. Don't forgive the pun. So cooperation with India is vital for economic reasons, but also for, let's say, defence and intelligence purposes, combating Al-Qaeda, the Taliban, and so forth. And India punches above its weight culturally more and more. So with more Indian immigration, with more Indian investment and Indian corporations buying up more and more of the UK, the United Kingdom might eventually find itself controlled, officially or unofficially, by India. And India is obviously going to be a force for human rights, for democracy around the world. And an increasingly large and assertive British Indian community might say, well, now the boot's on the other foot. This is not 1947. Decisions would need to be taken in New Delhi. That might be a good thing if the United Kingdom were to become a colony of India. And interracial marriage is increasingly common in the United Kingdom. So a lot of people would be half Indian or a quarter Indian and not really see India as foreign and be willing to be dominated by India. Domination doesn't have to be bad. It depends whether it leads to better outcomes or not. So that's what I believe is going to happen. Within a century, the United Kingdom will be a colony of India. Remember where you heard it first.